Have you ever faced a mountain so high that it seemed impossible to climb? A storm so fierce that fear threatened to drown your faith? I am here to tell you that there is a power greater than any obstacle, a power that transforms despair into hope, weakness into strength, and impossibility into miracles. That power is trusting God with all your heart. When you surrender your plans, your fears, and your doubts to Him, He steps in and does what only He can do. Today, let me show you how trusting God is not just a choice, it's the pathway to life-changing miracles. Have you ever noticed how often we try to solve problems with our own understanding, our own strength, our own resources? We plan meticulously, calculate every step, and still, we sometimes find ourselves facing a wall, frustrated and exhausted. That is because the resources of man, while useful, are limited. There is a deeper provision, a higher intelligence, a divine source that operates beyond the constraints of our human reasoning. And the key to accessing this infinite provision is simple yet profound trust. Trust in God is not a passive act. It is a conscious, deliberate surrender of control, a recognition that our perspective is finite while God's wisdom is infinite. When we truly trust God, something extraordinary happens. Doors that were closed begin to open. Opportunities that seemed impossible suddenly appear. Resources you never imagined exist, manifest in ways that defy logic. It is as if the universe itself bends to align with the faith of the believer. This is not coincidence, it is the natural consequence of aligning your will with God's. Trust becomes the channel through which divine provision flows, transforming scarcity into abundance, lack into sufficiency, and despair into hope. Think about it for a moment. How often have we delayed action because we were uncertain, because we felt ill-equipped, because the situation seemed too overwhelming? That hesitation is the opposite of trust. Hesitation says, I cannot do this on my own. Trust says, I may be limited, but God is limitless and He will supply all I need. This is not mere optimism, it is a profound psychological shift. When you shift your mind from self-reliance to divine reliance, your perception of reality changes. You begin to see potential where others see impossibility. You begin to notice opportunities that were always present but invisible to the anxious mind. Provision from God often comes in unexpected forms. It may be a person appearing at exactly the right moment, an idea emerging in a time of confusion, or a solution that defies human logic. Trust positions you to recognize these blessings when they arrive. Without trust, you might dismiss them, overlook them, or even fail to act on them. Faith is like opening your hands and saying, I am ready to receive what God has already prepared. It is the posture of readiness, not desperation, of expectation, not anxiety. Moreover, trusting God reshapes the very way we live. It reduces fear, softens the grip of stress, and cultivates a sense of peace that cannot be manufactured by effort alone. The human mind can obsess endlessly over what it lacks, but trust redirects focus from limitation to possibility. It is a cognitive realignment that frees energy for creativity, courage, and action. It is the understanding that provision is not merely the accumulation of material goods, but the cultivation of wisdom, guidance, and divine timing. So I invite you today to consider this deeply. What if your next step, the one you hesitate to take, is not meant to be achieved through your own strength? What if it is the moment where trust becomes your instrument to unlock God's provision? When you act with faith, you create alignment with a force far greater than any obstacle. You step into a current of blessing that cannot be quantified, controlled, or predicted, but can be experienced. And here is the truth to remember. Provision is not something earned by struggle or anxiety. It is something released through trust. It is the natural overflow of a heart willing to rely not on what it can do, but on what God can do. Let your trust be active, let your faith be courageous, and watch as the unseen resources of heaven enter your life with precision and abundance. Remember this, when you trust God fully, you are not asking for help. You are opening the door to a provision that has already been prepared for you. Life is full of challenges. Every one of us will encounter moments where the weight of circumstances feels unbearable, where the road ahead seems blocked, and where hope feels distant. Most people see challenges as obstacles, walls that must be avoided, feared, or reluctantly endured. But what if I told you that these same challenges are not merely obstacles, but invitations? Invitations to grow, to transform, and to experience the power of God in ways that comfort and convenience never could. Something extraordinary. It changes not only what we experience, but how we perceive what we are experiencing. When we face difficulties, our natural instinct is to resist them. We panic, we plan, we worry, and we try to force solutions with our limited understanding. Yet faith teaches us to pause and see through a different lens. It allows us to perceive what is hidden, the opportunities, the lessons, the breakthroughs that lie within the struggle. This is not blind optimism, it is a profound shift in consciousness. By trusting in God, we are not denying reality. We are acknowledging a higher reality, a divine order in which every difficulty carries within it the seeds of potential growth and transformation. Consider the principle of growth in nature. A seed does not become a tree by avoiding the pressure of the soil, but by pushing through it. A diamond forms under immense pressure. Similarly, the challenges we face are the pressures that shape our character, strengthen our resolve, and open us to divine possibilities we could never access in comfort alone. Faith allows us to see that the very things we perceive as setbacks are, in truth, setups for something greater. Psychologically, this shift is powerful. When we approach challenges with faith, our minds stop being consumed by fear, frustration, or hopelessness. Instead, we begin to ask, what is God teaching me here? How can this difficulty bring forth growth, wisdom, or blessing? This single question transforms our emotional and cognitive response. We move from resistance to curiosity, from despair to creative problem solving, and from anxiety to expectancy. Faith transforms the unknown from a source of fear into a field of opportunity. Moreover, when we trust God during hardship, we activate resilience that is not our own. There is a remarkable energy that enters the heart of a believer who faces trials with faith. It is a divine fortitude that lifts us above circumstances, that allows us to persevere when the logical mind says it's impossible. And often, the very challenge that seemed designed to defeat us becomes the catalyst for a miracle, a breakthrough, or a moment of insight that changes the course of our lives. This does not mean the struggle disappears, nor does it mean that pain is immediately removed. Faith does not grant immunity to life's storms, but it changes the experience of those storms, turning them from crushing burdens into transformative experiences. It is a lens through which we see possibility in what others see as despair. It is the understanding that every problem contains within it the potential for a divine solution if only we approach it with trust rather than fear. So I ask you today, how do you approach the challenges in your life? With anxiety or with faith? With resistance or with curiosity? Remember, faith transforms the very nature of difficulty. What once felt like a wall can become a stepping stone. What once felt like a burden can become a blessing. And when you embrace challenges with faith, you begin to live in a reality where every difficulty carries within it the potential for divine opportunity. Let this truth settle in your heart. The obstacles you face are not meant to stop you. They are meant to prepare you, shape you, and reveal the power of God in ways you never imagined. We often think of surrender as weakness, as giving up, or as stepping aside when life becomes too difficult. Yet, nothing could be further from the truth. True surrender is not defeat. It is a deliberate, conscious alignment with a higher power. It is the recognition that our limited understanding and effort, while valuable, cannot always produce the results we desire. When we surrender to God, we release the tight grip of control, and in that release, something extraordinary begins to happen. We step out of the realm of the ordinary and into the space where the supernatural can move freely. Consider for a moment the weight of our human striving. We plan, we strategize, we work tirelessly, and yet there are times when the results we long for elude us. It is in these moments that surrender is not resignation. It is intelligence. It is an acknowledgement that there is a divine orchestration beyond our comprehension, and that aligning ourselves with it will produce outcomes far greater than our own efforts ever could. This is the paradox of faith. The less we cling to control, the more powerfully God works through us. Surrender is not passive, it is an active, courageous decision. It requires humility, for we admit that we do not have all the answers. It requires trust, for we believe that God sees what we cannot. And it requires patience, for the divine breakthrough may not occur on our timetable. But when we embrace this posture, doors begin to open that no human hand could force. Opportunities emerge that were invisible before. Solutions arrive in forms that defy logic. Circumstances shift in ways that seem impossible until they are realized. This is the very nature of supernatural breakthrough. It is the fruit of a heart willing to let go of its own limitations and embrace the infinite possibilities of God's wisdom. Philosophically, surrender is a release of ego. It is a recognition that our identity, our plans, and our definitions of success are not the ultimate measure of life. When we surrender, we no longer try to dictate every detail. Instead, we participate in a flow greater than ourselves, and in that flow, miracles occur. Psychologically, this shift alleviates anxiety and opens the mind to creative solutions that were previously obscured by fear and stubborn self-reliance. We begin to see that what we once perceived as barriers are actually the canvas upon which God will paint breakthroughs. Think about the stories of those who have achieved the extraordinary. Rarely is it sheer effort alone that produces transformation. It is surrender paired with faith. Moses could not lead the nation out of Egypt by strategy alone. He had to trust and obey. David did not defeat Goliath with mere courage. He relied on God's power. And in our own lives, breakthroughs, whether in relationships, career, health, or purpose, are rarely achieved by human strength alone. They require a heart willing to yield, to step aside and to say, Lord, I release this situation into your hands. Surrender is the gateway to the miraculous because it allows the divine to enter where human effort falls short. It is the invitation for God to act without constraint, for the impossible to become possible. And the moment we surrender, we discover something profound. The burdens that once weighed us down begin to lift. Clarity replaces confusion and doors open that we did not even know existed. So I urge you today to examine your life. Where are you holding too tightly? Where are you resisting the flow of God's wisdom? True breakthrough is waiting on the other side of surrender. Let go of the need to control and watch as the supernatural begins to unfold. Remember this, surrender is not the end of effort. It is the beginning of divine possibility. When you release control to God, you invite the extraordinary into the ordinary, and miracles become the natural outcome of faith. Life has a way of testing us. Challenges do not arrive in neat packages. They come unexpectedly, often when we feel least prepared. And in those moments, it is not our circumstances that define us, but the strength of our spirit. Spiritual resilience is that invisible fortitude which allows us to endure, to persevere, and to emerge stronger despite the storms that surround us. But this resilience is not something we can manufacture purely through willpower or intellect. It is born from trust. Trust in God, trust in His wisdom, and trust in the ultimate goodness of His plan. When we face trials without trust, our hearts become weighed down by fear, anxiety, and doubt. Every problem feels insurmountable. Every setback seems permanent. The mind becomes a battlefield of what-ifs, constantly rehearsing failure and imagining the worst. But when trust enters, everything changes. Trust redirects our focus from the turbulence of circumstance to the stability of God's presence. It tells our soul that even in the midst of uncertainty, we are not abandoned. And that strength comes not from our own efforts, but from alignment with the divine. Psychologically, trust rewires our response to difficulty. It allows us to pause rather than panic, to reflect rather than react impulsively, and to seek solutions rather than be paralyzed by problems. It fosters patience and endurance, teaching us that timing and process are often as important as the outcome itself. In essence, trust equips us with a mindset that sees challenges as temporary and surmountable, rather than permanent and overwhelming. It transforms our inner narrative from one of fear to one of possibility. Trust does more than calm the mind. It strengthens the spirit itself. Spiritual resilience is the ability to stand firm when all else shakes. It is the capacity to keep believing when hope seems distant, and it is forged in the furnace of faith, through a consistent reliance on God, even when circumstances suggest otherwise. Each act of trust, each prayer, each moment of surrender, each decision to rely on God builds an inner fortitude that no external circumstance can destroy. It is this resilience that allows the believer to continue moving forward, to act courageously, and to persevere when others might give up. Philosophically, resilience through trust is a recognition of a higher order. It acknowledges that life is not merely a sequence of random events, but a field in which divine principles operate. When we align ourselves with these principles, we are not invincible in the sense of being immune to pain, but we become invincible in the sense of remaining unshaken in purpose and faith. We come to understand that obstacles are not meant to destroy us, but to cultivate endurance, patience, and character. Trust becomes the lens through which trials are reframed, revealing hidden opportunities for growth and divine intervention. Consider the lives of those who have inspired generations, those who faced persecution, loss, or rejection, yet remained steadfast. Their resilience was not born of human strength alone. It was born of trust in God, of confidence in a plan beyond their immediate understanding. In our own lives, when we cultivate this same trust, we discover a power that transcends circumstance. We find calm in the storm, clarity in confusion, and courage in the face of fear. So I encourage you today to ask yourself, where are you relying solely on your own strength, and where could trust in God transform your resilience? The storms you face are not a measure of your weakness, but an opportunity to strengthen the spirit that faith alone can fortify. Remember this, trust is not merely comfort, it is empowerment. When you trust God deeply, you are not avoiding life's storms, you are standing strong in them. And in that strength, spiritual resilience becomes your unshakable foundation. We live in a world obsessed with speed, immediacy, and control. We want answers now, results instantly, and solutions before the problem even fully materializes. Yet life and God operate on a rhythm far greater than our impatience. Divine timing is not a delay, it is a precision that orchestrates events in ways that human planning cannot replicate. The outcomes that arrive at the right moment are often more perfect, more complete, and more transformative than anything we could have forced ourselves. To trust in God's timing is to embrace a profound understanding that there is a season for everything, and that no circumstance occurs without purpose. When we rush ahead of God, we often create unnecessary stress, make hasty decisions, or miss the opportunities that were meant to appear at the proper moment. Psychologically, impatience fosters anxiety and fear. It convinces us that we must act before we are ready, that our resources or knowledge are sufficient to achieve what only God can orchestrate. But faith calls us to pause, to wait, and to trust that the unfolding of life is being directed with infinite wisdom. Waiting is not inactivity, it is alignment. It is preparing ourselves to receive what is already being prepared for us in the unseen realm. There is a natural order to how blessings and breakthroughs manifest. They are rarely random, and they are never mistimed. Consider the process of planting a seed. You cannot accelerate growth by pulling it from the soil prematurely. Watering, sunlight, and patience are required. Yet if you trust the process, the seed will grow into a fully formed plant, bearing fruit far beyond what your impatience could have achieved. Divine timing operates in the same way. The challenges, delays, and periods of waiting are not obstacles. They are the nurturing process that ensures the outcome is exactly what you need, fully developed and ready for the purpose God intends. Philosophically, trust in divine timing is a recognition of the limits of human perception. We see only fragments of life's tapestry. We cannot perceive the intricate interweaving of events that lead to the perfect outcome. When we surrender to God's timing, we are admitting that the unseen is far greater than the seen, that what appears delayed is actually being carefully orchestrated for maximum impact. This is a shift in consciousness that requires patience, humility, and faith, but it brings profound peace and clarity to the believer who understands it. Trusting God's timing also strengthens character. Waiting is not passive resignation, it is active preparation. During the period of waiting, we are refined, equipped, and positioned for the breakthrough that will come. Our attitudes, intentions, and spiritual maturity are being shaped so that when the moment arrives, we are ready to receive it fully. Human impatience often leads to shortcuts or compromises, but divine timing ensures completeness, ensuring that the eventual outcome is aligned with the highest good and the divine purpose. Consider your own life and the moments when something arrived exactly when it needed to, even if it seemed late or inconvenient at the time. Perhaps a relationship, a career opportunity, or a moment of guidance came at the perfect instant to prevent failure, to amplify blessing, or to teach a crucial lesson. These are not accidents. They are evidence of a God who works with absolute precision, who aligns circumstances, people, and events to produce perfect outcomes. So I challenge you today, release the need to control the timing of your life. Release the urgency that blinds you to divine orchestration. Trust that God's timing is perfect, even when it feels slow, even when the waiting is uncomfortable. Each pause, each delay is not a punishment or a sign of absence. It is preparation, refinement, and divine alignment. Remember this, when you trust in God's timing, you are not waiting in vain. You are positioning yourself for perfection. Every delay has a purpose. Every season a lesson, and every moment of trust brings you closer to the outcome that is already prepared for you by the hand of God. We often pray for miracles, long for breakthroughs, and hope for transformation, yet we sometimes overlook the one principle that activates the miraculous: obedience. Obedience is not mere ritual or compliance, it is the conscious alignment of our actions with God's guidance, the willingness to act even when it challenges our understanding, comfort, or convenience. Miracles do not come simply through desire or hope, they come when faith is expressed through action. This is the profound truth that underpins every story of divine intervention in Scripture and in the lives of those who truly trust God. Obedience requires courage. It asks us to step out of our familiar routines, to move beyond what seems safe or predictable, and to take action in alignment with God's direction. This is often uncomfortable because it challenges our sense of control and forces us into uncertainty. Yet it is precisely in that tension between the known and the unknown that the miraculous is most often unleashed. When we obey, we create a channel for God's power to flow. Without obedience, our prayers and intentions remain stagnant, and the potential for divine intervention remains dormant. Philosophically, obedience reflects a deeper understanding of life itself. Life is not merely a sequence of events we manage, it is a partnership with the divine. Just as the human body requires the harmonious cooperation of countless systems to function, so too does spiritual life require the alignment of thought, faith, and action. Obedience is the bridge between faith and fulfillment. It is the moment when abstract belief transforms into concrete results. When we act in accordance with God's principles, we enter into a rhythm where the impossible becomes possible, where what once seemed unattainable is suddenly within reach. Psychologically, obedience strengthens trust and reinforces resilience. Each time we act in faith, even when fear or doubt whispers otherwise, we experience a small victory, a tangible confirmation that God's ways are higher than ours. These moments of faithful action build confidence, reshape perception, and prepare us to respond to larger challenges with courage. Obedience is therefore not only a spiritual principle, it is a transformative practice that trains the mind to see opportunity, the heart to remain steadfast, and the soul to recognize divine patterns in life's unfolding. Consider the lives of those who witnessed God's extraordinary power. Noah built an ark before a single drop of rain fell. Abraham obeyed the call to leave everything familiar, not knowing his destination. Peter stepped out of the boat onto turbulent waters because he trusted the voice of Jesus. In each instance, miracles were not triggered by faith alone. They were activated through decisive, obedient action. Faith without obedience remained theoretical. Faith expressed in obedience became reality. In our own lives, miracles are often waiting in the threshold of obedience. Perhaps it is a word of encouragement we are called to speak, a risk we are called to take, or a difficult choice we are called to make. The divine principle is simple. The closer our actions align with God's guidance, the more fully His power can manifest. The universe, governed by divine laws, responds to alignment with God's will, producing results that defy explanation yet bring transformation, provision, and blessing. Obedience is therefore not a burden, it is the key to unlocking the extraordinary. It is the active expression of trust, the visible fruit of invisible faith. It converts prayer into reality, expectation into fulfillment, and desire into tangible blessing. And when we embrace obedience, we are not merely following instructions. We are participating in the miraculous, stepping into a reality where God's power moves freely through our lives. So I challenge you today, look for the areas where God is calling you to act, where He is inviting you to obedience. Do not wait for certainty, comfort, or convenience. Step forward in faith. Each act of obedience is a spark that activates the miraculous, a key that opens the door to blessings prepared for you from the beginning. Remember this, miracles are not distant possibilities. They are activated through your obedience. When you align your actions with God's will, you move from hoping for the extraordinary to experiencing it, and the power of heaven begins to manifest in every area of your life.